Ferdinand Speaks Sports, talking up Auburn. Check him out on his YouTube channel as Auburn gets to a spring practice here in a few weeks. All right, let's look at the offensive side of the ball. You wanted to talk quarterback, which I'm thinking it's Bo Nix's job, and who's going to wrestle it away from him. Your thoughts about Bo Nix, and is there a quarterback competition, or is it just all about improving Bo Nix?
I think it's a combination of both. I think you're going to have a legit quarterback position. Quarterback competition. I also think this is a developmental opportunity for Bo Nix, who had a strange amount of what quote unquote bad habits. And a lot of those bad habits trace back to high school. And the strange thing about it is the fact that Bo Nix actually was successful with some of these bad habits, with some of the what would transfer over as poor mechanics in Power 5 football. He tends to flush the pocket, before he needs to, just for a lack of a better way of putting it. He doesn't like to set his feet when he throws at times. He was actually successful doing that kind of stuff in high school, but of course, in Power 5, that doesn't usually work. I think he's going to have some serious challenges from Demartrius Davis, who in some media outlets in the state of Texas, North Shore High School, close to Houston, arguably the best quarterback coming out. Well, he was actually the quarterback of the offensive player of the year, I think, over in Texas this year. Had a great amount of success, very successful as far as wins and losses out there in Texas. And and I'm pretty sure with that type of success has to come with a successful mentality. Has to come with the guy who says, look, I'm not coming all the way from Texas when I could have gone to Texas A&M, when I could have gone right up the street to Houston. I could have even gone to the FCS route and went to Texas Southern in Houston. I'm coming all the way to Auburn in the heart of SEC country, and I want to make a statement come as one of the best quarterbacks out of Texas my senior year. I'm not coming here just to sit on the bench.
All right. We got Vernon Speaks Sports on the line to talk Auburn. Yeah, Bo Nix coming off a season which he completed 60% of his passes, which in this day and age isn't necessarily the best. You had Mac Jones at 77%. Now, that's obviously the high end. That was like the best figure in the history of college football, but 65% seems to be about where these guys are throwing at this point. 12 touchdowns, 7 picks. Again, not the best ratio there, but he also adds the running element to it. When we look at his threats downfield, who do we pick up? Who do we lose at wide receiver?
Arguably, I mean, you can't discount the loss of Seth Williams, who, will be definitely a clutch wide receiver, good for the deep throws, good for a game-winning back shoulder throw. Sometimes he had his flaws as well, but overall, it's just hard to replace that production readily. And then you talk about the prospect of, Anthony Schwartz. When he gets his hands on the football, some things can happen. He's one of the fastest, or was one of the fastest college football players in the country. You have to replace that talent with, guys like Kobe Hudson, right down the road from Troup County High School in LaGrange, Georgia. He's going to be a guy that they're going to depend on. Xavion Capers is a guy that they're going to have to look upon. Shedrick Jackson. And I think when we talk about going into spring football for Auburn, one of the biggest questions, one of the biggest thumbnails of the spring is who's going to be that next breakout receiver. And then if you look at it historically, Auburn has just never had that receiver that just scared the crap out of you. Like, say, for instance, the receiver from Devontae Smith from Alabama. He scared the crap out of you. You had to account for him. That is on your bulletin board as a defensive coordinator. How are we going to stop him? I don't think many Auburn fans can name a guy. Now, we've had some good ones, but we just haven't had a guy that just really kept defenses off balance. And I think that's something that Auburn is going to want to look at moving forward. Because if you think about all of the teams that have won national championships in the last few years, they've had elitism at wide receiver.
No question about that. It's become a passing game, and you need those guys that can change the game, not just move the sticks, but get the chunk plays that you need in this day and age. The offensive line has been a sore spot of concern for a few years now. And based on this 2021 class, there's not going to be a whole lot of help coming at this point.
Well, Auburn is doing, not to sugarcoat this, Auburn is in a tough spot when it comes to offensive line, especially coming into the season. And if you take away the concerns at offensive line, then I could get on here and say, hey man, you might really need to look out for Auburn this year. But when you have a situation where the offensive tackle, the left tackle opposite Bo Nix, is just a position that Auburn has not been able to fill consistently at a high level. If Auburn can't find a reliable left tackle to protect either Bo Nix, Demarcus Davis, or whoever is the quarterback's back shoulder, and that quarterback has trust in that position, then you're going to be you're going to be in pretty bad shape. Also, I mean, just missed blocks. You know, a lot of developmental things that you expect out of an offensive line. Auburn just has not been able to execute that here in the last couple of years. Now, I will say, when you're dealing with an offensive line, a anemic offensive line, not having a spring practice really hurts, because you don't get that physical sample size. You don't get to put those guys in adverse positions, and you have to utilize the football, the actual game day to figure out who's going to be the best guy from a physicality standpoint. Auburn was actually moving in the right direction, but then you get last season, but then you get an injury to Brandon Council. Then other guys started to become injured, and now you just have a skeleton crew rolling into the rest of the season, and it just didn't work out. But here's some good news. Auburn actually they haven't done a excellent job as far as rating recruiting wise, but they have a hell of a sample size of guys that they can put in positions to where they could possibly put a good combination, at least a manageable combination in place with manageable backups to make their offensive line. Even if Auburn can be respectable at the offensive line position, I think that puts them in a position to not necessarily win a SEC West championship or win the national champion, but it puts them in a decent place to be competitive against the teams that they need to be competitive against. We'll talk about that in a second.
Well, anytime we point out a recruiting ranking for a particular player, that player could be the 100th rated player at his position. He could turn out to be a superstar. The recruiting rankings mean a whole lot when you talk about in droves, in volume.
Right.
But for any particular player, we see it all the time. 5 stars become busts, and 2 stars become tremendous players. But again, more than likely, your best players are going to come from those 4 and 5 star ranks.
Yep.
The only 2 guys that they signed in the 2021 class up front are Garner Langlow. He's the 34th rated guard in the country. They also signed Colby Smith, who's the 50th rated offensive tackle in the country. So again, not necessarily guys that, based on the recruiting rankings, you would expect to become all SEC kind of performers, but we'll just have to wait to see them on campus, and only one's going to break in spring ball as well.